for her statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the European Union on behalf of Group of Friends for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls, Ms. Antoinette NCUBE, the youth representative on behalf of the EU Commissioner for Equality. You have the floor, Ms. NCUBE.
Honorable Chair, distinguished government and civil society representatives, I am Antonette NCUBE, an agronomist, an environmentalist, and youth activist from Botswana. Gender-based violence is a global challenge. It is even rifer in my home country, where 67% of women have experienced abuse, over double the global average. It is indescribable the experiences of young women such as myself in climate activism, sustainable agriculture, and the informal sector on how escalated lack of safety nets due to climate change impacts us adversely. Chair, today I have the honor to speak on behalf of members of the cross-regional group of friends for the elimination of violence against women and girls. The group is pleased to welcome and recognize San Marino as its newest member. First, I would like to express the group of friends' support for all women and girls that are facing the devastating consequences of the conflict in Ukraine. We know that women and girls are particularly impacted by conflicts and displacement, and that they already faced increased risk of sexual and gender-based violence. We are deeply concerned by the situation, and we will continue to express our total support to protect women and girls' rights, to prevent and respond to sexual and gender-based violence, and to advocate for their participation and access to essential services such as education, health, and health services. We also remain deeply concerned about women's and girls' rights violations in Afghanistan, the Sahel, the Middle East, and elsewhere. Suppression of peaceful demonstrations, night raids, and abduction of women's rights activists must stop in Afghanistan, and women's voices must be heard. We continue to support all women and girls in conflict situations and ask the international community to make sure that their human rights and fundamental freedoms are respected and protected. Chair, climate change, disasters, environmental degradation, biodiversity loss disproportionately affect women and girls of all ages, especially those in diverse situations and conditions. Crises and disasters exacerbate pre-existing gender inequalities and compound multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination. As such, women and girls frequently face increased sexual and gender-based violence, including harmful practices due to the impact of climate change and its associated risk factors, disproportionate burden of care work, restricted access to essential health services, including sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights, based on the accordance with the Program of Action of the International Conference on Population and Development and the Beijing Platform for Action and the outcomes of the documents for their review conferences. Therefore, climate and environmental action and disaster risk reduction need to be gender responsive, protect and promote all women and girls as agents of change, and directly address the specific risks and needs they face. Chair, the group highlights the following recommendations. First, all stakeholders should ensure the gender-responsive implementation of international obligations and commitments. We further stress the importance of fulfilling commitments made by participating states at the Generation Equality Forum's Action Coalition on feminist action for climate justice. Second, more must be done to address the disproportionate impact of environmental degradation, biodiversity loss, climate change, and disasters on women and girls, particularly violence against them. We stress the need to mainstream a gender perspective and develop gender-responsive policies and programs to address women's and girls' needs and the challenges they face. There is also need to tackle the root causes of violence against women and girls, particularly gender inequalities, negative social norms, and gender stereotypes. We should build preparedness for disasters and enhance resilience by addressing women's and girls' unequal access to natural resources and strengthen social protection measures such as cash transfers and access to health services, including sexual and reproductive health, mental health, and psychological support, as well as quality education, lifelong learning opportunities, housing, and employment. We call for further efforts to address the impact of climate-related security risks on women and girls and increased investment in sexual and gender-based violence prevention and response efforts. Third, the group stresses the importance of enhancing women's full, equal, effective, and meaningful participation and leadership at all levels, and the inclusion of and support for civil society. Women play a central role in conservation and sustainable use of natural resources and biodiversity as critical agents of change. Therefore, substantial efforts are needed to achieve women's full, equal, effective, and meaningful participation in decision-making and leadership roles. The full, equal, meaningful participation and empowerment of youth is particularly important. The group is proud to lead by example. We call for increased support to environmental civil society organizations, including women's rights organizations, indigenous women's organizations, women human rights defenders, women journalists, and youth-led organizations who are often at particular risk of discrimination and violence. Moreover, eliminating sexual and gender-based violence depends on further cooperation and collaboration involving states, civil society, women's rights organizations, human rights and environmental defenders, youth, indigenous people, rural communities, peace builders, academia, and the private sector. We also need to ensure the increased participation of men and boys in all matters related to sexual and gender-based violence, including in changing attitudes and combating gender stereotypes and negative social forms. Lastly, we need to improve data and strengthen coordination and capacity building. The group encourages all stakeholders to use comprehensive indicators and pursue the ethical collection and dissemination of high-quality, timely, reliable, and disaggregated data and gender statistics on all dimensions of environmental, disaster risk reduction, and climate change issues and sexual and gender-based violence. We call on all partners to help ensure the necessary resources, including budgetary, to promote gender-responsive climate change and environmental action and policy, including by contributing to existing human rights-based national and global initiatives such as the Spotlight Initiative. Chair, with its 94 members representing all regions of the world, the group is fully committed to implementing these recommendations. It invites all partners to join us. Together, we can end all forms of sexual and gender-based violence and take a decisive step towards a just, gender-equal, climate-resilient, sustainable future. Thank you, Chair.